Executive Department. Qualifications, election, and term of office of the President and Vice President. Qualifications: 1. Natural-born citizen of the Philippines. 2. A registered voter. 3. Able to read and write. 4. At least 40 years of age on the day of the election. And 5. A resident of the Philippines for at least 10 years immediately preceding such election. Section 2, Article 7. Election of VP and President. 1. If regular election, second Monday of May. 2. National Board of Canvassers for President and Vice President shall be the Congress, where 1. Returns shall be transmitted to the Congress directed to the Senate President, and 2. Joint public session not later than 30 days after election. Returns to be opened in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives in joint session. 3. The Congress, upon determination of the authenticity and due execution, shall canvass the votes. 4. Person having the highest number of votes shall be proclaimed elected. 5. In case of a tie, one will be chosen by the vote of majority of all members of both houses of Congress, voting separately. Jurisprudence on canvassing. Congress may validly delegate the initial determination of the authenticity and due execution of the certificates of canvass to a joint congressional committee composed of members of both houses, from the case of Lopez versus Senate, 2004. Even after the Congress has adjourned its regular session, it may continue to perform this constitutional duty of canvassing the presidential and vice presidential election results without need of any call for a special session by the President. Only when the Board of Canvassers has completed its functions is it rendered functions official. From the case of Pimentel Jr. versus Joint Committee of Congress, 2004. The Supreme Court as Presidential Electoral Tribunal. The Supreme Court, sitting en banc, shall be the sole judge of all contests relating to election, returns, and qualifications of the President or Vice President, and may promulgate its rules for the purpose. Term of office, 6 years, which shall begin at noon on the 30th day of June, next following day of the election, and shall end at noon on the same day 6 years thereafter. Section 4, Article 7. Note: the President is not eligible for any re-election. No person who has succeeded as President and has served for more than 4 years shall be qualified for election to the same office at any time. Section 4, Article 7. Succeeded as President, meaning refers to the Vice President as automatic successor or elected President by virtue of a special election and serves the unexpired term, and eligible to run for President if he has served for more than 4 years. Acting President is not included. So si Gloria dili 4 years ang iyang serve sa unexpired term. So even if he served for more than 4 years, he can be elected as President kung acting ra. But if he succeed, if more than 4 years, he cannot run for President. What are the privileges, prohibitions, and disqualifications of presidents? Official residence. The President shall have an official residence. Section 6, Article 7. Salary. This shall be determined by law. It shall not be decreased during tenure. No increase shall take effect until after the expiration of the term of the incumbent, during which such increase was approved. Section 6, Article 7. Presidential immunity. The President, as such, cannot be sued, enjoying, as he does, immunity from suit, but the validity of his acts can be tested by an action against other executive officials, from the case of Carrillo versus Marcos, 1981. The privilege may be invoked only by the President. Immunity from suit pertains to the President by virtue of the office and may be invoked only by the holder of the office, not by any other person in the President's behalf. The President may waive the protection afforded by the privilege and submit to the court's jurisdiction. Cases of Sullivan versus Macasyar, Beltran versus Macasyar, 1988. But presidential decisions may be questioned before courts where there is grave abuse of discretion or the President acted without or in excess of jurisdiction. Gloria versus CA, 2000. Immunity coextensive with tenure and covers only official duties. After tenure, the chief executive cannot invoke immunity from suit for civil damages arising out of acts done by him while he was president, which were not performed in the exercise of official duties. From the case of Estrada versus Desierto, 2001. This presidential privilege of immunity cannot be invoked by a non-sitting president, even for acts committed during his or her tenure. The case of Saez versus Macapagal Arroyo, 2012. Exception. The president may be sued if the act is not one arising from official conduct. Case of Estrada versus Desierto, 2001. Second privilege, presidential privilege. It is the right of the president and high executive branch officers to withhold information from Congress, the courts, and ultimately the public. Russell, Take note. Case law uses the term presidential privilege to refer to either 1. Immunity from suit, that is, immunity from judicial processes, from the case of Neri versus Senate, Saez versus Macapagal, or 2. Executive privilege from the case of Akbayan versus Aquino, Infra. Vice President. Qualifications, election and term of office and removal are the same as the president, except that no vice president shall serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. The vice president may be appointed as member of the cabinet. Such requires no confirmation from the Commission on Appointments. Prohibitions on the executive department. The following prohibitions apply to the president, the vice president, the members of the cabinet, and their deputies or assistants. So what are the prohibited acts? 1. They shall not receive any other emoluments from the government or any other source. For president and vice president, Section 6, Article 7. And 2. Unless otherwise provided in the Constitution, shall not hold any other office or employment. Section 13, Article 7. Exceptions to the prohibited acts. 1. Exception does not include post occupied by executive officials without additional compensation in an ex officio capacity as provided by law or as required by the primary functions of the said official's office. From the case of National Amnesty Commission versus COA, 2004. 2. Second exception. The vice president being appointed as a member of the cabinet. 3. The vice president acting as president when one has not yet been chosen or qualified. Section 7, subsection 2 and 3, Article 7. 4. The Secretary of Justice sitting as ex officio member of the Judicial and Bar Council. Section 8, subsection 1, Article 8, Civil Liberties Union versus Executive Secretary. Other prohibitions include the following. Shall not directly or indirectly 1. Practice any other profession. 2. Participate in any business. Or 3. Be financially interested in any contract with or any franchise or special privilege granted by the government or any subdivision, agency, instrumentality thereof, involving government-owned or controlled corporations or their subsidiaries. Section 13, Article 7. Prohibition. Strictly avoid conflict of interest in the conduct of the office. Section 13, Article 7. And lastly, may not appoint a spouse, may not appoint one spouse or two relatives by consanguinity or affinity within the fourth civil degree as members of the constitutional commissions or the office of the ombudsman, or as secretaries, undersecretaries, chairmen, or heads of bureaus or offices, including government-owned or controlled corporations and their subsidiaries. Prohibition. Only eccentric people believe kakatos find soulmates. 1. Hold any other office or employment. 2. Practice any other profession. C. Participate in any business. D. Be financially interested in any contract with or any franchise or special privilege granted by the government or any of its subdivision, agency, or instrumentality. President's spouse and relatives by consanguinity or by affinity within the fourth civil degree cannot be appointed during his tenure as such. A. Members of the Constitutional Commission. B. Members of the Office of the Ombudsman. C. Secretaries, undersecretaries, chairmen, or heads of bureaus or offices, including government-owned and controlled corporations and subsidiaries. The stricter prohibition applied to the President and his official family under Article 7, Section 13, as compared to the prohibition applicable to appointive officials in general under Article 9b, Section 7, Paragraph 2, is proof of the intent of the 1987 Constitution to treat them as a class by itself and to impose upon said class stricter prohibitions, from the case of Civil Liberties Union versus Executive Secretary, 1991. Exceptions to rule prohibiting executive officials from holding additional positions. For the President, 1. The President can assume any or all cabinet posts because the departments are mere extensions of his personality, according to the doctrine of qualified political agency. Hence, no objection can be validly raised based on Section 13, Article 7. And 2. The President can assume ex officio positions. Example, the President is the chairman of NEDA. Section 9, Article 12. For the VP may be appointed as a member of the cabinet. Such appointment requires no confirmation. Section 3, Article 7. Cabinet. The Constitution allows a cabinet member to hold any other office, provided 1. It is in an ex officio capacity and without additional compensation. 2. Such is necessitated by the primary functions of his position. Example, Secretary of Trade and Industry as chairman of NDC, Secretary of Agrarian Reform as chairman of Land Bank, and 3. Such is allowed by law. From Civil Liberties Union versus Executive Secretary. Note: Section 7, Article 9b is the general rule for appointed officials. It is not an exception to Section 13, Article 7, which is a specific rule for members of the cabinet, their deputies and assistants, inter alia. De facto officer doctrine. What does it mean? In cases where there is no de jure officer, a de facto officer who in good faith has had possession of the office and has discharged the duties pertaining thereto, is legally entitled to the emoluments of the office and may, in an appropriate action to recover the salary, fees, and other compensations attached to the office, from the case of Funa versus Agra, 2013. A de facto officer's acts enjoy the presumption of regularity and are valid as far as public or third parties are concerned. The case of Espiritu versus Del Rosario, 2014.